A poor farmer, with only $12 left, discovers an inheritance that changes everything. The morning the letter arrived, Ethan Walker had exactly $12.46 in his pocket. He knew the number because he'd counted it 3 times the night before, trying to figure out if it would stretch to cover both feed for their last mule and enough flour for biscuits. It wasn't going to be enough for both. The farmhouse table sagged in the middle, stained with decades of hard use. Ethan sat there in the dim light of dawn, his calloused hands folded while his daughter Lily stirred at the stove, trying to make their breakfast stretch into something filling. She was 16, tall for her age, her hair the same dark copper color her mother had once worn braided down her back. Ethan tried not to notice how thin she'd gotten over the last year, or how often she quietly slid a piece of bread from her plate onto his when she thought he wasn't looking. The sound of hooves crunching on gravel broke the silence. Rusty, their old shepherd dog, barked once and then whined tail low. A courier was coming up the lane, something rare enough that both Ethan and Lily stepped outside, squinting into the morning light. The rider dismounted without ceremony, handed Ethan a yellowed envelope sealed in wax, and rode away without a word. The return address read Jonah Mercer. Ethan frowned. The name meant nothing to him. Some distant relative, maybe. Inside the envelope lay a single sheet of paper written in shaky ink. You inherit my ranch and everything on it. Look for what I couldn't take with me. The answer is where the old oak stands alone. Folded with the note was a deed to 200 acres of land in a county Ethan had barely heard of, hundreds of miles west. According to the paper, the property had transferred to him upon Mercer's death 3 weeks prior. No mention of why, no explanation, just land a cryptic message and a dead man's signature. Lily's breakfast sat forgotten on the table as she read over her father's shoulder. Papa, why would somebody leave you land? Especially somebody we don't even know. I don't know, sweetheart. Ethan turned the brittle deed in his hands uneasy. I don't know what sense there is in it. The lawyer's attached note described Jonah Mercer as a recluse, a man who'd lived alone on that property for 30 years. No family, no friends, buried in a small plot out back with a simple marker. And yet somehow he had known Ethan's full name. Somehow he had chosen him. 2 days later, Ethan and Lily bounced along a rutted dirt road in their mule-drawn wagon, heading toward the property. Every mile farther from home felt heavier. Their own farm was on the brink of foreclosure. He'd borrowed against it so many times the bank had stopped sending polite notices. They had nothing left to lose, and maybe something to gain. When the broken-down ranch house finally came into view, Ethan's heart sank. The roof sagged and the middle boards hung loose like broken teeth, and the windows stared out like empty eye sockets. The barn leaned so badly he half expected it to collapse before nightfall. Rusty darted ahead, nose low to the ground. Lily hopped down from the wagon and pushed at a half-buried metal box near the porch. The rusted lid crumbled beneath her touch. Inside lay 3 strange objects: a hand-drawn map of the property marked with unfamiliar symbols, a heavy iron key dark with tarnish, and an old photograph of a man who looked exactly like Ethan. Same jawline, same eyes, dated 40 years earlier. Lily's voice trembled. Papa, that's you. But it can't be. This picture was taken before you were even born. Ethan's throat went dry. He tucked the photograph into his coat, unsettled. Rusty barked again, this time at the tree line beyond the ranch. They followed him into a clearing where a massive oak tree stood alone, towering above the barren fields. Its bark bore carvings worn by decades of weather-strange symbols that matched those on the map. Beneath them, almost hidden in the rough bark, were initials JM plus EW. Lily traced them with her finger. JM for Jonah Mercer. But EW, that's you, Papa. Ethan swallowed hard. His mother, Eleanor Walker, had died when he was 12. She'd told him bedtime stories about hidden treasures and family secrets. He'd dismissed them as fairy tales, a grieving woman's way of comforting a boy. She'd never once mentioned a brother named Jonah. And yet here was proof carved into the living wood. What's buried stays buried until the time is right. Lily read aloud, deciphering a faint inscription near the roots. Ethan pressed a hand against the oak's rough trunk. His mother's voice echoed in memory. The real treasures aren't always gold, son. Sometimes they're hidden in the knowing. Back at the ranch house, Ethan drove a shovel into the dry earth. The ground was so hard it sparked beneath the blade. Sweat poured from his brow as Lily sat cross-legged beside the oak, turning the iron key over in her hands. "Papa, this key's heavier than it looks. Feel it." Ethan did. The weight was wrong, denser than steel, almost like solid gold beneath its tarnished shell. Tiny engravings caught the light along its shaft, faint numbers etched by hand. Coordinates, dates. He couldn't tell. "We should check the house again," Lily said with determination. They scoured every room of the abandoned ranch house. Nothing but dust, cobwebs, and silence until Lily's fingers pressed against a loose floorboard in the back bedroom. She pried it up, and beneath lay a leather-bound journal wrapped in oilcloth. The first entry made Ethan's heart pound. "Eleanor came by today. She's worried about the boy. Says he's got the same stubborn streak as our father. I told her the secret dies with us, but she thinks different. She thinks someday Ethan might need what's buried here more than we do." Lily looked at him with wide eyes. "Papa, he's writing about you." Ethan closed the journal, suddenly aware of how still the air had become in that ruined ranch house. The secrets of his family were no longer fairy tales. They were waiting here, carved into trees locked beneath the earth, whispering of fortunes and dangers he could barely imagine. And outside, as the sun dipped behind the barren hills, Rusty's low growl carried a warning Ethan could not yet decipher. The oilcloth-wrapped journal smelled of old leather and damp earth, its edges brittle, but the ink still sharp and dark. Ethan Walker sat on the warped floorboards of the ruined bedroom, his daughter Lily beside him, her hand resting lightly on his arm as though afraid he might disappear if she let go. Rusty lay by the door, ears pricked, his low growl fading into uneasy silence. Ethan opened the first pages carefully, his fingers trembling. The handwriting was firm, deliberate, the kind of script taught in schoolhouses a generation ago. Each entry bore a date stretching back more than 30 years. "Eleanor believes the boy will need this someday. She doesn't trust the banks, and neither do I. What we've built must be hidden, passed only to the rightful heir. The collection cannot fall into greedy hands." Ethan's heart thudded. Eleanor, his mother. He turned page after page, each one a fragment of a life he had never known. Jonah Mercer hadn't been some hermit living in obscurity. He'd been something else entirely. The journal described estate sales auctions and secret purchases. A list of coins filled the margins. 1916 D, Mercury dimes, 1933 double eagles, Morgan silver dollars, commemorative sets, each item meticulously recorded, each acquisition stored in a hidden cache. The numbers were staggering. Jonah wrote of selling one piece for $2 million. Another transaction brought in $500,000. His tone wasn't one of greed, but of strategy, as if he were a man playing a decades-long game with invisible opponents. The collection is worth over $100 million now, but it's worthless if the wrong people take it. Value means nothing without protection. Lily read over her father's shoulder, her eyes bright with a mixture of awe and fear. Papa, this isn't just treasure. It's a fortune. A real fortune. Ethan shook his head. It doesn't make sense. If Jonah had all this, why live out here in a shack? Why let the place rot to the ground? Lily traced her finger down the page until she found the answer in Jonah's own words. A vault is only safe if it is forgotten. A hermit is less likely to be robbed than a banker. The collection is not mine to spend. It is for the boy, for Eleanor's son, when the time is right. Ethan closed the journal, his throat dry. He felt both burdened and chosen, as though his mother had been whispering across time through the hand of her brother. But questions swirled too quickly for answers. How had Jonah known about Ethan's struggles? Why him and why now? The sound of metal striking wood startled them. Rusty's paws scrabbled against the porch as he barked at something outside. Ethan and Lily rushed into the fading daylight. Near the oak tree, a piece of earth had collapsed where Ethan had been digging earlier. Half buried beneath the dirt was the corner of something metallic, something larger than a simple box. Ethan dropped to his knees, clawing away the soil with bare hands until the outline of a heavy iron vault emerged, its top fitted with hinges and multiple lock mechanisms. The key Lily had found fit perfectly into one of the slots, but there were at least 3 more locks, each a different design. It's real, Ethan whispered. The stories, the map, all of it, it's real. Lily crouched beside him, her hair falling into her eyes. Papa, the numbers on the key. Maybe they're combinations for the other locks. Ethan squinted at the faint engravings. Could be. Or dates. Jonah mentioned important dates in the journal. Birthdays, weddings, things we'd never forget. They couldn't test it now. The iron vault was too heavy to move and the mechanisms too complex to open without tools. Night was falling and the land felt watched as though shadows themselves had eyes. Ethan pulled Lily close. We'll figure this out in daylight. Tonight we stay inside. But the ranch house gave little comfort. Wind whistled through the broken windows and the sagging walls creaked with every gust. Lily refused to set the journal down, clutching it like a lifeline. She pored over the entries by lantern light, her determination sharp. Her young face hardened by the weight of sudden responsibility. Near midnight she gasped. Papa, listen to this one. Ethan leaned closer as she read aloud. Sold another piece to a collector in Denver today. $2 million earned, none of it spent. Eleanor believes the boy will lose everything if left alone. I believe she is right. The day will come when he must choose between despair and destiny. The words struck like a hammer. Jonah hadn't just known about Ethan. He'd known about his debts, his wife's death, his collapse under the weight of hardship. How, from hundreds of miles away, had this reclusive uncle been watching? Before Ethan could answer his own thought, the sound of wagon wheels crunching gravel cut through the night. Rusty exploded into barking at the door. Lily jumped to her feet, clutching the journal to her chest. Through the cracked window, Ethan saw lanterns swinging. 3 men dismounted from fine horses. At their head strode a man in a tailored suit, polished boots gleaming despite the dust. He rapped confidently on the warped front door, his smile practiced and too wide. "Mr. Walker," he said smoothly as Ethan opened the door a cautious inch. "My name is Richard Callahan. I represent Consolidated Development." Ethan didn't move to shake the man's extended hand. "You seem to know a lot about me already." "Of course." Callahan's smile never faltered. "We've been monitoring this property since Jonah Mercer's passing. We expected someone would eventually arrive to claim it. Truth be told, we're here to save you from a considerable burden." Lily tightened her grip on the journal. Callahan's eyes flicked to it immediately, lingering with a flash of recognition before returning to Ethan. This land, Callahan continued gesturing with casual disdain toward the rotting ranch, is worthless. No water rights, poor soil, too remote for farming. But my company specializes in finding opportunities where others see decay. I'll make you an offer, $50,000 cash for the entire property. Ethan's chest tightened. 50,000. More money than he had ever seen at once. Enough to pay the bank, start fresh, maybe even give Lily the chance at college she deserved. But Callahan's eagerness was wrong. His timing too perfect. His gaze too sharp on the leather journal under Lily's arm. "That's generous," Ethan said carefully. "Maybe too generous for worthless land." For the first time, Callahan's smile cracked. Just for a second. Then it returned as polished as before. "I'm a businessman, Mr. Walker. I see potential where others see problems. My offer stands for 24 hours. After that, I'll consider it rescinded." He tipped his hat and turned his men following into the dark. But Ethan's gut churned. Callahan hadn't ridden out here on a hunch. He knew. Somehow he knew about the vault, the collection, the inheritance that was never meant for him. Lily whispered into the silence left behind, her voice trembling but fierce. "Papa, did you see the way he looked at this journal? He's after it. He's after everything." Ethan stared into the darkness where Callahan had vanished. Rusty growled low, sensing his master's unease. "Yeah," Ethan said grimly, "and he's not finished with us yet." Morning broke red across the barren hills, streaking the sky like spilled paint. Ethan Walker hadn't slept. He sat on the porch with his rifle balanced across his knees, though he knew full well it was little protection against what might be coming. Beside him, Rusty whined low, watching the dirt road as though he expected strangers to appear at any moment. Inside, Lily spread Jonah Mercer's map across the table, tracing the strange symbols with her fingertip. "Papa, see how the circles mark the vaults. But look here, this square with the W. It's different. Not treasure, maybe. A warning." Ethan rubbed at his eyes. "Your uncle was cautious, maybe even paranoid. He could have set markers to scare off thieves, or maybe to call for help." He didn't want to admit how much he hoped that was true. Before Lily could answer, the sharp clatter of engines carried on the wind. Not horses this time. Trucks. Ethan stiffened. Rusty barked furiously, racing to the road. 3 vehicles crested the ridge dust rising behind them. Callahan's voice echoed across the quiet ranch as he stepped from the lead truck, his expensive suit immaculate, despite the rough terrain. Behind him came 6 men, armed, their jackets lifted just enough to show the steel at their waists. Mr. Walker Callahan called with false cheer. "Good to see you again. I trust you've reconsidered my offer." Ethan rose slowly, rifle still in hand. "I told you yesterday 50,000 is too much for worthless land. Which means you know it's not worthless." Callahan's smile widened. Straight to the point. "I respect that." He strolled forward, his men fanning out around the oak tree. The truth is, Jonah Mercer was no hermit. He was a collector, a hoarder of rare coins. My research indicates the collection is worth, conservatively, $100 million. Lily clutched the journal tighter. "How do you know that she demanded?" Callahan's eyes flicked to her. "Because my company has been after this property for years. We offered Jonah a fortune. He refused every time. Now that he's dead, the inheritance passed to you and with it, access to his vault." He gestured toward the partially uncovered metal structure near the oak. All you have to do, Mr. Walker, is open it with the key your daughter found. We'll take 60%, you keep 40. That's more than a poor farmer could make in 10 lifetimes." Ethan stepped in front of Lily, his rifle steady though his palms were slick with sweat. "And if I refuse?" Callahan's smile thinned. "Then I'm afraid circumstances become unpleasant." His men shifted hands, brushing pistols, but Ethan noticed something important. For all their bluster, they weren't firing. Callahan needed him alive, needed his cooperation. "The key won't do it," Ethan said slowly. "There are 3 other locks. Jonah made sure one man couldn't open it alone." Callahan frowned, crouching beside the vault. His flashlight beam revealed multiple mechanisms, rotating dials, notches carved like puzzle pieces, each distinct. He scowled, then waved his men forward. "Search the house. Tear it apart if you have to. The combinations must be written somewhere." 2 men dragged Ethan and Lily back inside. Callahan himself followed, impatient. They flipped furniture, ripped open walls, pried up floorboards. Still, the answers eluded them, until Lily turned to a journal page she hadn't yet read aloud. "Papa, listen. The important dates make the best passwords. Birth, death, marriage, heartbreak. The numbers that matter most are the ones we never forget." Ethan's chest tightened. His mother's birthday, his own, his wedding anniversary. Family milestones that only they would know. He glanced at Lily, who understood instantly. The carvings on the oak tree, the numbers etched faintly near the initials. "The clues aren't in here," Ethan said deliberately loud enough for Callahan to hear. "They're outside, on the oak." They returned to the massive tree, Callahan's torchlight sweeping the bark. Lily circled quickly, eyes searching. Here, she shouted. "Look." Faint but visible, carved decades earlier, were a series of numbers: 03, 15, 52, 08, 23, 78, 06, and 12, 03. Callahan leaned close, a hungry gleam in his eyes. Birthdays, anniversaries. Of course, Jonah was sentimental, but Lily wasn't finished. Lower, near the roots, half hidden by grass, another message was carved. "The real treasure isn't in the ground. It's in the knowing. E.W." She touched the letters with trembling fingers. "Papa, that's Grandma Eleanor's initials. What if the coins aren't the only treasure? What if Uncle Jonah meant something else too?" Callahan scoffed. "Pretty words. The only treasure that matters is gold and silver." He barked orders, his men swarming the vault. "Set the combinations. Let's open it." The locks turned metal, groaning. With a grinding screech, the vault door cracked open, torchlight spilling across rows of wooden boxes labeled in Jonah's neat handwriting. Ethan lifted the nearest one. Heavy. He opened it under Callahan's glare. Gold coins gleamed in the firelight, bright, impossibly pristine after decades underground. Lily gasped, her breath catching. Ethan recognized some from the journal entries. This was real, all of it. But Callahan wasn't satisfied. "There are more," he said. "The map shows at least 12 locations. We'll dig them all tonight." As the men spread out with shovels and iron rods, Lily tugged her father's sleeve. "Papa, look." She pointed to one of the map's strange symbols, the square marked with a W. "Warning," she whispered, and then faint at first came the sound of hoofbeats. Not one horse, but many. Callahan's men froze listening. Ethan's heart surged. The sound grew louder, 8-10 riders at least moving fast down the road. "Expecting company, Mr. Callahan?" Ethan asked, his voice cold. For the first time, Callahan's mask slipped. His face paled in the torchlight. no one should know we're here. But Lily was already piecing it together. Papa Uncle Jonah wrote about a warning system. What if it wasn't mechanical at all? What if it was people? The hoofbeats thundered closer. Torchlight flickered on the horizon. Callahan's men raised their weapons, panic breaking their earlier confidence. "Boss, we need to go now." Callahan spun desperate, shouting at Ethan. "There has to be more. The journal, the map tell me how to find the rest." But Ethan only tightened his grip on his daughter's hand, because the riders weren't strangers. They were lawmen, and Jonah Mercer's warning system had just been triggered. The thunder of hooves grew deafening as riders crested the ridge. Torchlight flared, revealing the glint of badges on their coats. Their formation was too disciplined for ranch hands or neighbors. These were lawmen. Territorial marshals, one of Callahan's men, shouted panic, cracking his voice. The leader raised a lantern high and barked across the darkened field. "This is the Territorial Marshal's office. Drop your weapons and step away from the excavation." For one frozen moment, the world held its breath. Then a fool in Callahan's crew jerked his rifle skyward and fired. That single shot unleashed chaos. Gunfire exploded in all directions. Muzzle flashes tore through the nightlight in the oak tree and the half-open vault like a macabre stage. Ethan grabbed Lily and threw her to the ground behind the heavy trunk, shielding her with his own body as bullets whined past. Rusty barked furiously, lunging at shadows. The marshals moved like men who'd rehearsed this. Shots rang sharp, controlled, each finding its mark. Within minutes, 2 of Callahan's men were sprawled lifeless in the dirt, another crying out as a bullet struck his arm. The rest broke formation, scrambling for cover that didn't exist in the barren clearing. Callahan himself ducked behind the vault. His polished shoes coated with mud, the practiced smile on his face gone. When the shooting finally ebbed, his men were disarmed, lying in the dust under the stern gaze of armed marshals. A tall woman in marshal's clothing strode forward, lantern casting her shadow long and sharp. She removed her hat, revealing dark hair streaked with silver. Her voice carried calm authority. "Mr. Walker, I'm Marshal Sarah Martinez. You're safe now." Ethan pushed to his feet, keeping Lily close at his side. His rifle hung useless in his hand, but his eyes stayed fixed on Callahan, who knelt in the dirt with rope cinched around his wrists. Blood trickled from a graze at his temple where a marshal's bullet had come too close. "What's going on?" Ethan demanded. "How did you know to come here?" Martinez handed him a folded document, worn but carefully preserved. "Your Uncle Jonah hired our private security firm 15 years ago. Some of us are sworn marshals, others work private contracts off duty. Jonah paid a retainer year after year to keep watch on this ranch. If anyone tried to take the collection by force, we were to intervene." Lily's eyes widened. "Uncle Jonah, he planned this." Martinez nodded, down to the smallest detail. Ethan unfolded the paper. His uncle's handwriting flowed across the page, steady even in age. "If you are reading this, it means someone has threatened my heir. Ethan, the collection you inherit is worth more than $100 million. But its true value lies in the protection it buys. Every coin has been authenticated, appraised, and documented. Trusted dealers are already prepared to purchase them legally. You will not have to navigate the market alone. I spent 30 years not just collecting wealth, but building a shield for you and Lily." Ethan's hands shook. He read the words twice before they settled into his chest. All this time he had thought Jonah a recluse, a hermit clutching coins in the dark. In truth, Jonah had been watching, planning, weaving a net strong enough to catch his family before they fell. Callahan spat into the dirt. "You can't prove any of this. We never stole a thing." Martinez turned her face unreadable. "You held a 16-year-old girl at gunpoint while demanding access to her inheritance. That's armed robbery, extortion, conspiracy, attempted kidnapping. You'll face 30 years at least." Callahan's eyes blazed. "You think you've won. Those coins belong to me. I spent years tracking Mercer's movements, studying every deal, every sale. I earned that fortune." Ethan stepped forward, voice like gravel. "You earned nothing. Jonah built it. My mother protected it. You tried to steal it." Lily gripped her father's sleeve. "Papa, the notebook, the one with all the dealers' names. Do you still have it?" She pulled it from her coat, handing it carefully to Marshal Martinez. Inside were lists of addresses, phone numbers, and notes in Jonah's tidy hand, which buyers could be trusted, which auction houses could move coins discreetly, which dealers specialized in gold or silver. Martinez skimmed it quickly, then gave a low whistle. "Your uncle didn't just collect coins. He mapped out the entire legal path for liquidation. This is airtight." "Liquidation." Ethan repeated the word, tasting foreign. "It means," Martinez said, closing the book, "that you could sell the entire collection within 6 months. Every dollar would be legitimate, every transaction above board. Taxes are already accounted for in a trust Jonah established. You and your daughter will walk into this inheritance without fear of seizure or fraud." Lily's eyes filled with tears she refused to let fall. "Mama always said we'd be okay someday. She told me not to give up." Ethan swallowed hard, his throat aching. He pulled her close, holding her as the marshals loaded Callahan and his surviving men into a prison wagon. The once proud businessman now sat, slumped, his wrists bound, fury radiating from his every glance. As the wagons rattled away, Ethan turned to Martinez. "What do we do now?" She placed a steady hand on his shoulder. "Jonah left instructions. He wanted you to burn this house to the ground. Leave the past here and start fresh. He's already arranged for your next steps. There's a safe deposit box at the bank in town waiting under your name. Inside are the authentication papers, the appraisals, and a letter of transfer for the collection." Ethan looked back at the sagging ranch house, the cracked windows and rotting boards. It had been a place of secrets, of burdens and ghosts. Maybe Jonah was right. Maybe it was time to let it go. That night, under a sky heavy with stars, Ethan struck a match and tossed it through the broken doorway. Flames licked greedily at the dry boards, catching fast. Lily stood beside him, her face lit orange in the firelight, clutching the journal one last time before she too dropped it into the blaze. The words were already etched in her memory. They didn't need the paper anymore. The house collapsed in on itself, sparks rising into the night. The past burned away, leaving only the oak tree standing tall against the fire's glow, its carved initials glowing like embers. Ethan wrapped an arm around Lily's shoulders. For the first time in years, he felt lighter, not just because of the fortune buried beneath their feet, but because of the knowledge that they had been loved, protected, and prepared for this moment long before they even knew it. Jonah's voice lingered in his mind. "The real treasure isn't in the ground. It's in the knowing." And as the fire roared, Ethan finally understood. 6 months later, the Walker family lived a life almost unrecognizable from the one they had left behind. The ashes of Jonah Mercer's ranch had long since cooled, scattered by the prairie winds. In its place, Ethan and Lily stood on the wide porch of their new home in Colorado Territory, 3,000 acres of green pasture, running water, and solid fences that stretched farther than the eye could follow. The new ranch house rose tall and proud, painted white with a wraparound porch where Lily liked to read in the evenings. It smelled of cedar beams and fresh paint, not mildew and rot. Chickens scratched in the yard. Horses grazed in the corral, their sleek coats shining in the sun. Ethan had insisted on buying 47 rescue horses and 30 head of cattle, saying it wasn't wealth if you didn't use it to build something worth keeping. The coin collection, once hidden in dusty vaults beneath rotting boards, had sold for even more than Jonah predicted. Auction houses, private collectors, and trusted dealers had confirmed the final tally, over $151 million after taxes and fees. Every transaction was documented, every sale conducted legally, exactly as Jonah had planned. Ethan had thought money would feel heavy in his hands, but instead, it felt strangely freeing. He didn't rush to spend it. Instead, he paid off every debt from their old farm restored dignity to his name and quietly began offering work to neighbors who had lost their land. Men who had once stood with him in foreclosure offices now found themselves hired to mend fences, tend livestock, and manage the growing ranch. Families who had faced ruin discovered paychecks and roofs again. For Lily, the transformation was even greater. The girl who once clutched an old journal in fear now rode confidently across the pastures, her posture straight, her laughter bright. She attended the local school, excelling in mathematics and literature. One afternoon, she rushed home breathless with excitement. "Papa, the teacher, says I should prepare for college-level work. She thinks I'd make a fine teacher myself someday." Ethan had smiled watching her from the porch, pride swelling in his chest. "You sure you don't want to be a treasure hunter?" he teased. One adventure like that was enough. She laughed, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Besides, someone has to manage all these animals you keep buying." Rusty barked from his favorite spot under the porch swing, his muzzle now gray, but his eyes bright. He leapt up, suddenly alert, as a lone rider approached down the long driveway. Dust rose behind the hoarse sunlight, catching on the rider's badge. Marshal Sarah Martinez dismounted, her face calm but purposeful. She carried a leather satchel under her arm. "Mr. Walker, Lily," she nodded to both. "I have news about Richard Callahan." Lily climbed down from the fence rail, her expression hopeful. "Please tell me it's good news." Martinez smiled faintly. The territorial court sentenced him to 35 years in prison. No parole. His organization has been dismantled completely. We recovered stolen collections worth more than $400 million from families he and his men targeted. Your uncle's foresight helped us track the whole operation. She handed Ethan the satchel. Inside were official court documents bearing seals and signatures. Callahan's appeals had been exhausted. Justice was final. Ethan read silently, then exhaled long as though setting down a weight he had carried for years. "It's over," he said softly. "There's more," Martinez added. "We found records showing that Jonah helped fund our investigation into Callahan's organization for 2 years before his death. He knew they were circling families with inheritances. He wanted to make sure they'd be stopped before anyone else suffered." Lily shook her head in amazement. Uncle Jonah was protecting people he never even met. Martinez placed a hand on her shoulder. He was protecting his family's legacy and ensuring no one else would live in fear the way he feared you might. As the marshal rode away, father and daughter sat together on the porch swing, watching the horizon fade into gold. Ethan glanced at his daughter, who had grown into a young woman before his eyes. She carried herself differently now, with confidence born not of wealth, but of survival knowledge and the unshakable bond of family. Papa Lily asked quietly, "Do you think Mama and Uncle Jonah would be proud of us of what we've built here?" Ethan pulled her close, his arm around her shoulders. Sweetheart, they'd be amazed by the woman you've become and proud of the life we've made. This ranch isn't just about money, it's about love, about someone planning so carefully that we'd be safe even after they were gone. Stars began to appear in the wide Colorado sky, bright against the fading blue. Ethan let the silence linger, the creak of the swing and the distant sound of horses the only rhythm. He thought of the boy he had once been, the poor farmer with $12 to his name, despair pressing down like a storm. He thought of Jonah's steady hand across time, guiding them toward a future they could never have reached alone. The treasure had been real boxes of gold and silver coins worth more than they had ever dreamed. But as Ethan looked at his daughter's smile, the strong fences, the lively animals, the neighbors working in the fields, he knew Jonah had been right all along. The real treasure isn't in the ground. It's in the knowing. This story reminds us that wealth is not only measured in dollars or gold. True fortune lies in foresight and planning for those we love and in the bonds that outlast hardship. Ethan Walker thought his life was over when his farm collapsed, but his uncle's wisdom and his daughter's determination turned despair into hope. Money can build fences, buy land, and pay debts, but love builds legacies that endure beyond lifetimes. The choices we make for others today can protect them tomorrow, even when we're no longer here. So ask yourself, what legacy are you building? What love are you securing for the future? If this story touched, you share your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe, because sometimes the greatest treasures are the lessons we discover together.